everybody.
It seems strange to be
See,
back
people,
now after a week. Has it? It's actually been a little bit more than a week now since Wiki Tree Day. So
mhm.
missed everybody. Went kind of through withdrawals after so many days of being on with everybody. So we're
Yeah,
here today with David Randall. Thank you everybody for tuning in for this final wrap up for the 15 Nations Global Tour. Our last country is Nigeria, and we have David Randall here to walk us through what that was like for the last couple weeks. So,
yeah. So
David, if
this
you want to,
this this is a little bit different of an episode because we actually did our 15 Nations wrap up a week ago. So we wrapped up the tour. We just haven't wrapped up Nigeria yet. So we are going to talk a little bit about Nigeria today, and then it's also different because I don't have a new country to present to you, which is really the highlight, I think, of the presentations is getting to announce the next country and introducing you to the next 15 notables. But for those who did not tune in to the 15 Nations Global Tour wrap up at on WikiTree Day, I'll review a little bit about what we've got going on after today. I do have some activity to fill the next couple months between now and the end of the year, and then we're going to introduce our global project, which most of you have probably heard of now because it's most of the audience here tends to be um, repeat attendees. So you're probably pretty familiar with it by now, but I'll give you an update on where we're at. And that'll fill up a little bit of time. But this tonight's session may go a little bit shorter than normal again, just because I don't have 15 people to introduce you to. So Nigeria. So here's my thought on Nigeria. Um, when you take a tour around the world or any place else, if you're anything like me, by the time you get to the last couple days, you're not quite as energetic and enthusiastic as you might have been back on the first couple days. You're kind of anxious to get home, and you're tired, and you've already got new adventures planned that you're thinking of. Um, so it seemed like with Nigeria, we were a little bit quieter. There wasn't as much dialogue going on, and we didn't make as many connections as we have in the past. In fact, we only made one connection, but we still had some successes. I'm going to talk about that. But I think part of it was just I think after 15 nations, we kind of started getting a little bit of fatigue. And again, when you see that finish line right around the corner, um, it's a little easy to kind of drop off the energy levels. So the other thing is Nigeria was a lot harder. I almost every country, it seems like when I do the wrap up, I say my group really surprised me at how many connections they were able to make. Um, and this time I was more surprised at how few connections we made. But that's okay. I was just surprised because I thought Nigeria would be a lot easier than it turned out to be. I've done some work and we've made a lot of family attachments, but just not the connections. And whereas in some of our other countries, including countries like Malaysia and Syria, that are not necessarily Western European connected, um, but nonetheless, they tended to marry fairly quickly in a generation or two, or a brother or sister-in-law came from Western Europe or came from America, and then our task was much easier once we found that connection. We just weren't finding them in Nigeria. I spent today working on added another half dozen relatives to one of our notables, but just none of them seemed to go anywhere but just in Nigeria. And the problem with that is if we don't have Nigerian profiles on WikiTree, there's nothing to connect them to. We could add 100 Nigerian profiles, but if we don't have Nigerians on the tree already, we just don't have any way to connect them. So in order to make those world connections, we have to find somebody typically in Western Europe or the United States, Canada. And often we found some in Australia as well. And on a few occasions, we found them in South America, down Argentina in particular. So if you want to scroll down a little bit, we can look at the one individual who we did connect. And this is a little bit interesting. I'm going to wait till you get there to say his name. The names are a little bit unfamiliar to the Western tongue, but Ken Saro-Wiwa, he was an environmental activist. And the interesting thing about him being the only one we connected is I almost took him off the list when I was making my list, because I just, in reading his bio, I didn't think he was quite famous enough. He did have the information there on WikiTree, but there just didn't seem to be that worldwide kind of notoriety that we normally would have. Um, the problem with taking him off the list was I had nobody else to put in his place because it was really hard to find 15 Nigerians who met the criteria. The criteria, as we've talked about, being that they are deceased for the most part. I've made a few exceptions to that rule, but we generally want them to be deceased so that members can access their profiles. And then, secondly, they can't already have a profile on WikiTree, or if they do, it has to be completely unconnected from you, meaning no parents, no siblings, no children, um, because that's part of the goal is to start with zero and see how far we can build. So so when you're dealing with countries like say Nigeria or many of the countries we've been to that have only come into the modern age, let's say within the last 100 years, their celebrities are all still living for the most part. They don't have actors and actresses and sports heroes from the 1800s or um, anything much beyond politicians and maybe some military figures. So that's why it becomes hard on connecting, or not connecting, but finding 15 deceased notables who are not on WikiTree and have enough fame that we're going to be able to make some connections. One of the reasons that one of several reasons why I've decided not to continue with the 50 nations as it is we run into two groups of countries that are already well represented on WikiTree, or those that are not, but also don't have 15 notables that I can find. So I was talking. Darren is one of our regulars, and he um, does a lot. He's from Australia, or from New Zealand rather, and he does a lot of work with that area. And wanted to know if we were going to be visiting Oceania. And I said I went through every single island nation down there, and I could not find five famous people that met our criteria for any of those island countries. So Darren is going to be heading our Oceania group or project with the global project. So he's now taken over all of those countries. But he wrote back to me that he agreed he cannot find a half dozen famous people for any one of those islands, unless you're just going to go strictly with the politicians. But that kind of gets boring. So anyway, as I said, I was going to take Kensaro Wiwa off of the list, but he got on, and he is the only one that we connected. He had a son, I believe, who married a um, British woman. If you click on it, you'll see. You probably are you able to actually open his profile?
Yeah, just give me a second.
Okay, excuse me.
It was, there we go.
Okay, and excuse me. I guess the best way to do it would be to go up to the My Connections,
On his
and then you
son's
could see
profile or on his?
um, well, you could do either one.
Okay.
They'll both take you to the same place. So you'll see that his son married a private person whose father, um, okay, we're moving there, whose mother is also private, um, but her father is British, or her grandfather, the wife's grandfather. So
Right.
whether or not she was British or her mother was British, I can't tell because the profiles are private. But by the time we get to the grandfather, um, lived his entire life in England, which means her mother was certainly born in England. Whether or not she was, I can't say. But so we were able to make the connection really very quickly.
That's awesome.
And you are only how many people away from him?
36.
36?
That's
Yeah, it's still something.
right.
Yeah,
There's a connection there.
36. Um, so anyway, so he's the only one we got connected. However, the silver lining on all of it is even though we didn't make connections, we have added 65 Nigerian family members to
Awesome.
the to WikiTree. So
That
somebody else coming along down the road now has 65 more chances, not counting the 15 notables. So that brings it up to 80 um, Nigerian profiles that are now on WikiTree that weren't there 3 weeks ago. So that's cool. Um,
they're
and
just
again, I
waiting
have
out there to be connected to.
yeah. So if we could start getting some Nigerian families or descendants of Nigerians, and the United States has a large Nigerian population. I'm not sure about. I imagine other Western countries too. I don't know how well known sites like WikiTree are in some of these countries,
Right.
um, but I know that in across Western Europe and that we've got lots of members. So
Well, and
um,
then we have the Connectathon coming up in January, so
mhm,
maybe somebody will take an interest and work on adding more to the families.
right. Right. And so why don't we with that, why don't we head on over since we don't have a whole lot to show on Nigeria, why don't we head over to the unconnected page that I've created? And this
Okay.
is what I'm hoping will keep people busy over the holidays if you don't have, family and traveling going on for the next 2 months, and you need something to do. I have created a page here. Azure will put the link in the chat room. But this is all of the notables from all 15 countries who we were not able to connect. Now we connected, I'm going to double check the number here, but I want to say 85 notables. Let me check on that real quickly, if I can find the page. But that leaves, oh, I thought I had the number here. I want to say 125. If I had my calculator, I could figure it out. There were two There were 225 individuals, and I think we connected 85. I'm doing the calculation here, and that tells me, nope, I just deleted it. I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm losing my spot here. Give me just 1 second.
No worries.
And
Sandy
anybody
says,
knows it's
thanks,
still up.
David, for the tour around the world. I can't wait to see the global project take off.
Yeah, and I think it will based on the participation I've already got. So that leaves 140 is the math that I was trying to do. Since I'm not good in my head, I needed the calculator. So there should be 140 names on this list, but we connected 85 notables from all 15 countries. That's
That's
a
amazing.
pretty amazing number.
Yeah,
We really had no idea what we were doing when we started. I had no idea what I was doing when we started. Um, and had no idea it was going to take off like it did. So it is really impressive that we were able to do as much as we did in some of the countries. I just could not stump my team. I'd come up with countries like I said, Malaysia, Syria, um, Egypt, Kenya. It didn't matter where we went; they were able to figure it out. And that's
yeah,
and
that's so
sometimes
cool.
I'd come up with a country I think they're never going to be able to get anywhere. Malaysia is the one I always come back to. I just they don't speak the not only do they not speak the languages of most WikiTreeers, but they don't write in the same script as most of us do. So and I'm still trying to find the other page here. Um, trying to talk and look at the same time. It doesn't always work for me. Um, global project. No, 15 nations. Okay, here it is. Okay, so if you could go to 15 nations global travelogue. That's the page I wanted to show people. Fortunately, we got extra time today, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the page that just summarizes what we did on the tour. We had 225 um, notables over the course of the 15 stops and 15 countries. We started on January 1st, so we took us just over 10 months. And we were able to connect, if you scroll down just a little bit further, we were able to connect 84 notables, but I believe I have one more that I haven't added on there. So I think it's actually 85. Need to double check that. Um, but if we're going to round off, we can say 85. Um, there's a link there to the unconnected, but this is just a list. This is chronological. Um, had I realized I started this going from day one, and had I realized how many we were going to have, I would have organized it different. But once the table's up, it's real hard to go in and reorganize it. But you can, if you click at the top of any column, you can sort by nation, you can sort by birth date, but these are in order by birth date. If
You
you
can
want to see
actually
as
filter here, that's what this section is right here. So you can
mhm.
filter for a country too.
Right, so if you just want to find one country, you can do that as well.
Yeah.
So if you're curious about one country, that's fine. Now, all of these individuals have been connected, but I've got them up here because that doesn't mean that they have well-written bios. It doesn't mean that they're fully sourced. So if anybody wants to go in, well, and it also doesn't mean that they have both parents, their wives and husbands and children and siblings all up there. So sometimes it's just a direct um, line back, um, father to father to father or so on, with none of the collateral relatives tied in there.
And the
But
more of those collateral lines that get filled in, of course, then
mhm,
maybe some of the other unconnected people from the same country will be able to be connected. So,
yeah, and as we get over to our global project, some of those teams may want to come back here and look. For example, we do have a Greek project that is already in the works, so they may want to come back here and look at some of these notables and see how their profiles have been set up, some of the research that we've done, and then incorporate them into their own project. So if we go back to the unconnected, because that's where the real activity lies. So the unconnected, I sorted differently there by category. So we can go back up to the top and we'll scroll down the different categories that people will find here. So we only have two royals that didn't get connected. The royal families were fairly easy to connect, but we do have the only king of Haiti who is still unconnected. We can scroll down to the actual section and you can see the pictures going on there. So there's our king of Haiti and then also our princess of Nigeria, who, again, we were able to make some connections to her family, but they're all still in Nigeria, so there's no connection to the big tree. Then we went into political leaders. The political leaders, um, I've said this over and over, but it always fascinates me how difficult it is to connect the political leaders. And I think in large part it's because they keep their lives very private in order to maintain the mystique of being kind of all powerful. A lot of them, especially those that are more dictatorial and that you see there Manuel Noriega and some of the others. And then we have the current leaders. There's yeah. The current leaders are also difficult for a combination of reasons. One, again, they don't share information about their families like we do in the United States and a lot of Western countries. But they're also still living and their families are still living. So even if we might be able to find their spouses, sometimes even their parents, if they're all still alive, it doesn't do us a whole lot of good. So that's a problem with a lot of the living um, heads of state and heads of government. So we still have a few. I think we only connected out of 15. Not everybody has two, but there's probably, let's say, 25 heads of state and heads of government. We only connected three.
Right.
So that was our biggest challenge as far as a category of notables. Looks like I've got a picture missing there, so I got to fix that. There's Zelensky from Ukraine that's in the news quite a bit. Then here we have some activists and reformers. So most of these people, they're not far off from the politics. They didn't typically hold top office, but they were active in the revolutions that, most countries at some point were colonies. And a lot of these people were colonial leaders who, led revolutionary movements. A few of them were not revolutionary leaders, but they were feminist leaders. Um, and then you've got at the bottom here, um, you've got the first African woman to ever win the Nobel Peace Prize. Um, working to improve the economic well-being of her country, not so much a revolutionary. We've got a few artists. I don't think there's too many artists here.
That's it.
About
Yeah,
six.
looks
Yeah,
like
about six.
yeah,
Yeah, so we got a few. Artists are notorious for being kind of private. We've only got one business leader, and that's typically because most of the business leaders are well known maybe in their country, um, but but not necessarily worldwide. So in this case, we have the founder of Samsung, who's from South Korea, so he was an internationally known person. Um, we've got entertainers, which is my favorite group. And it's everything from composers and classical musicians to movie stars. And towards the end, you'll see some rock stars. We've got an Academy Award winning actress right there, Katrina Paxino. Um, she's one of our very few Academy Award winners that we haven't been able to connect. Um, I think when I say I mean WikiTree in general, not just our project.
right.
Um, this is the individual who wrote Zorba the Greek. Um, We've got you have Vangelis there who wrote Chariots of Fire. I think he's coming up still. Opera singer. Um, yeah, there he is. Vangelis, Ukrainian actress, Egyptian actor,
Yeah,
Malaysian singer.
that's great.
Um, yeah, so we got a whole range of actors and musicians there. Then we've got our scientists and explorers. A bit of a range here as well. Some more internationally known as than others, and a group of astronauts. I was real big on trying to get the astronauts in if I could.
Yeah,
We've got
that's
five
cool.
astronauts. We weren't able to connect any of them, but I was really amazed at how many countries have sent individuals into space. Syria, Malaysia. I never would have known that. And then I missed what country are we on here? Sports. Yeah, this is our sports section, or no, what category? The founder of the Olympics, the first Olympic medal winner. We've got a chess player in there, which not necessarily a sport, but martial artist. Lots of gold medal winners. And if you happen to connect a gold medal winner, head on over to the Olympics page and we'll get it connected over there as well. Looks like I've got a column that's out of whack there, so we'll get that fixed. You got some that you might recognize now. Roberto Duran, the boxers up there. We had Rod Carew, the baseball player, but we did get him connected, so he's no longer on this list. But a couple names people might recognize. And then our writers and our poets, our journalists. Again, going back to the 1700s, some of these names. all the way up into the 2000s. Um, and then miscellaneous turned out, after I created the profile, to be mostly religious leaders. Um, there is a yoga master, which isn't quite religion, but some people think of yoga as a religion. It's religious based, at least. But most of these are somehow related. Now, I made a mistake of adding two Roman Catholic cardinals and didn't think about till afterwards that they don't marry and have children and families, so we limited our options with those. And then we got our Pope of Voodoo from Haiti, who was a big big player in bringing voodoo into the mainstream there. So
So
anyway, there's our whole list. So go ahead.
lots of options for people to add
Yeah,
to.
so all of these are unconnected. We'd love to get them connected, and if we can't get them connected, at least add a few more family members. Um, if well, and there's no time limit, so this will be up, indefinitely. So if you're bored and you just want to give it a try, it's it's a lot of fun. Ask any of the guys that were and ladies that were working on it. Um, the the can the I think if we as we go back, and I've talked about this before, we those of us that have been part of the project from the beginning have learned a lot of skills that we didn't have in the beginning. And my hunch is that if we are to go back and look at some of those first countries, we'll start making connections a lot quicker than we maybe did in the beginning. We weren't limited strictly to 3 weeks, but our instinct was at the end of 3 weeks to move on to the next nation. But I think if we stuck with some of these countries for 6 weeks or so, we'd have a lot more done. So I don't think we've exhausted all of our research options. I think we just ran out of time and moved on to other things. But now that we have the time, and again we've boosted our skills quite a bit, I bet if we were to go back, we could get a number of these people connected that we might have been stuck on at the time.
We have some comments,
Yeah, I like this last one. Yeah, I like that one. I hadn't thought of that. They probably do have a lot of siblings. Um,
and
yeah,
then
if you can find out the parents, and yeah, you probably how the football soccer challenge went. Okay, well, I'm gonna pull it up on my screen and let me give you a it went very well, but let me see if I can give you an actual number here. I wasn't prepared to talk about that. But so the football is relevant, to the global aspect. As we do a sports challenge every month, but the football challenge I picked, I think 90. We came up with 90 football players from around the world, and each one was from a different country. So there were no duplicates in terms of countries. So it was truly a global
effort.
project. And I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we connected um, 12 football players, but that's not bad given the task, because you could go in and connect somebody in a country that you have some experience with, if you're French or you're Canadian or whatever. But most of us aren't going to have experience with the records of more than a country or two. So a lot of the countries were, um, it's unlike the global tour where we're working with 15 people from the same country. So once we figure out the records, et cetera, we can continue to use those for the remaining notables. Here, once you figure it out and you go to the next one, you got to start all over learning about the records of that country. So this was a challenge. Now, this only records what I just stated with the 12. That's only the number of, if you just stop right here for a second, this is exactly what I was about to talk about. Um, we we're only talking about connections. Now you look at Richard Muller Nielsen, and it says here he has a 90. He started out with 0 connections, and we now have 190. That means that somebody created 190 profiles to add to make a connection. But it's 190 more profiles that are on WikiTree that weren't before. So all of these individuals started out as 0. So anywhere where you see a number next to that in the column, it tells you how many additional profiles were created. And it was hundreds of profiles that got created um, last month during this project.
That's great.
And this was a 1 month kind of somewhat spontaneous. People didn't have necessarily advance notice. So on the first of the month, I put it up on G2G, and whoever wanted to drop in could. So this was not an organized group of people by any means. Now, I will say that the Nordic team project jumped in and did a lot of work on this. So I think they're who got this 190 up here. But they connected a few of our Nordic football players, Norway, and I'm not sure which countries they all did succeeded with, but Sweden, Finland, that area.
So this is one of
Um,
those pop-up challenges.
yeah, I mean, we have a sports challenge every month, so they knew a sports challenge was coming up, but they didn't know what it was or what country it was. And as Vicky says, it was difficult but super fun, and that's what I love about it. It's not easy, um, but it's that same feeling. I compare WikiTree a lot of times to doing crossword puzzles. It's that puzzle aspect that I enjoy, and sometimes, I do the puzzle in the back of People magazine and I'm done in 10 minutes. But then I get out the New York Times and I really struggle with it. But when I finish it, I'm really impressed with myself.
Yeah,
So there's something about the reward of, um, there's some things that we can do, um, WikiTree browser and the sorcerer where it just kind of does the work for you. And some of that's really, is fine. But then there's other things where you got to really, um, put in everything you got and rack your brain to get these things solved. But when you do, and the thing that so many of us love about WikiTree is the collaboration. To have the team to go in and say, "Look, I'm halfway there. What am I missing? What can I do differently?" And get a fresh set of eyes or thought process going. That was a real joy as well.
very nice.
So, with our last few minutes, for those that haven't tuned in to some of our earlier presentations, let's jump on over to the new global project. And let me just give everybody a little bit of an update on what's going on there and what we still need from those that are interested and available. So this is a still kind of a prototype of our final what will be the final project page. So there's still some things here that are going to be eliminated, some things that'll be added. So don't view this as the final product. It's a work in project. But let's scroll down a little bit. So
And
for
I
people that don't know,
and
go
I
ahead.
just wanted to say I dropped
Mhm.
into the chat, the live chat, the link for the WikiTree Day Global project presentation. So if somebody hasn't seen that, they can go back and watch that.
Yeah, we did a whole 1 hour project profile on this for WikiTree Day. So if you haven't seen that, that's going to give you a whole lot more information than I'm going to give you tonight. But I just want to, particularly for anybody that hasn't seen it, um, if we could stop right here, let me just say for people that have no idea what I'm talking about, the global project, we have a global project currently, but this is going to be a completely revised global project. So don't confuse this with the old global project. Um, the new global project is going to have a link to every country in the world. There will be a free space page for every country of the world. And ideally, we're talking 195 countries. Ideally, we will have a project manager and a team for each of those countries. Now, I imagine in the beginning there will be countries that don't get a lot of attention and don't get volunteers for, and that's fine. But they will still have a page. So if you want to go there and see what's available. There'll be information about that country. And you never know when you might come across a relative from somewhere you didn't expect, or you're helping somebody else out with a project, or you're working on the Notables project, or one of the others, and you come across a country you're not familiar with, doing research in. Um, or you're just curious and you just want to go and see what's available. I just finished doing today. I finished creating the um, oh, no, I'm not even scroll down just a little bit. I'm drawing a blank on the name of the country. Go down to the B's. Bhutan. I'm sorry, I was just totally blanked out there. Bhutan. I created the page for Bhutan. Um, I didn't know anything about Bhutanese genealogy, or much about Bhutan in general, but there's a lot of interesting information there. We will have links to all of the country's national archives and national libraries. We'll have links to Ancestry and Family Search and Cindy's List and all those other places that you might find
Well, and
um,
that and having a
information.
place for each, having a space page or project page for each country then allows for greater collaboration. Then people can
Mhm.
share there what they know of something that we don't have there. So it really does rely upon people volunteering and
So then that's
communicating, collaborating.
the next point that I want to make is that we really need volunteers. I'm hoping to find 195 project managers to take over these. Some people are taking over more than one, so it may not be quite 195. Oh, and also let me say this: it's not actually 195 because those countries that already have projects, Canada, England, Australia, those are going to remain as they are. You'll see here we've got two lists. This is the non-European projects that currently exist on WikiTree, and above that is the European projects that appear on WikiTree. So
And so
those will not be affected.
these are like Project Denmark, Project England pages
Yeah,
instead of
right.
just a free space page. So
Yeah, and if you scroll down on the list here and you get to Denmark, there will be a link. It probably works if you want to scroll down to Denmark.
oh,
You
from
go a little bit further down the alphabetical list there.
down here. Yeah, it's
Nope,
not linked
Denmark
yet.
doesn't have. Let's scroll up a little bit to the C's and let's see, maybe Canada's up there. Trying to think
Yep.
of a country. Yeah. So click on Canada and you'll see it just takes you to the Canada project page. So we're not going to be taking over the country pages or anything like that. We'll just provide a link to those that already have them. This is for all those countries, and we figured there's about 18 country pages currently. So that still leaves us somewhere around 175 or so countries that don't have projects. So what do we have going on already? We already have a team prepared for or preparing for Armenia, for Greece, for Belgium, for Luxembourg, for all of the South Pacific islands. Um, Trying to think if I'm missing any. I know I'm missing a few. Argentina, um, oh, Tanzania, and but those are ones that actually have leaders in place that are already starting to put together their teams. But again, so let's go to, I think I need to unlock one, but let me open up, let me open up, let's, so let's do Belarus. That's when you don't hear much on it as unlocked. So if you click on Belarus, so this is what a page is going to look like. It's going to have everything you need to know to start doing genealogy with Belarus. The first things are just our mission and our goals for the project in general. Um, we'll have our leadership listed there, how to become a member, um, and then we get into the heart of the project, which is the information about Belarus. So we have a little bit on geography. We talk about the different administrative units, the capital city, etc. Um, and there's going to be a bunch of links right there where it says geography of Belarus. You can go over to Wikipedia and read all about it in detail if the paragraph we've written here isn't enough for you. A brief history, and again, this is focused on what you need to know if you're doing genealogy. It's not going to go into every event that happened and an earthquake here and this and that going on, but just what happened with the ethnicities that lived in the country, who came in, who came out, a brief timeline. The demographics again talks about the various ethnic groups that you're going to run into there. So just because you have ancestors from Belarus, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're Belarusian. According to this, they could be Russian, they could be Poles, they could be Ukrainians. So that's important to know. Talk about the languages you may run into. There's a link to Google Translate if you need it. Talk about the different religions because that's often where your records are going to be found. Different naming conventions because not only do different countries have different ways of naming their people, but we also need to come up as a country by country with how we're going to insert those names into the boxes that Wikitree gives us. I was working on, as I said, um, Bhutan earlier today, and they don't give last names. So according to the royalty project, when they have kings and queens with no last names, they give them the name of the country. But if we do that, then everybody ever from Bhutan is going to have the same last name of Bhutan. So that doesn't necessarily work. So um, these are the leaders, and on every page, I'm going to have the current leaders, the current. Oh, and I think that's wrong. He's not the king of Belarus. That should be the president of Belarus and the prime minister. A lot of this is cut and pasted, so sometimes I miss things, but it'll change that from king to president of Belarus. Um, if there is a monarch, or if there was a monarch, if there is a monarch, they'll be listed there as the head of state. If there was a monarch, but there is no longer, there will be a section that shows the last monarch of that country, and then from that individual, you should be through succession boxes. You should be able to go back in time and see all the monarchs that were ever part of that line.
That's great. That's really exciting.
And you scroll down a little bit further, and you'll see so this was interesting to me, some of the names here. So I'm going to give a list of notables, just like we did with the 15 Nations tour. There won't always be 15. In fact, I'm keeping it under 10. Sometimes it's only going to be closer to 5, depending on the country. I didn't know these people were all Belarusian, but there's Mark Chagall, there's Irving Berlin, um, some others that I'm not as well familiar with. But they're big names in their fields and particularly in their country. Um, we've got a rock singer down there or a folk musician. And then I think we have, oh, her picture didn't come up there, but we got Olga Corbett, who was a big name in gymnastics when I was a kid. And then the final section, if you go a little bit further, um, this is our resources. So as I said, every country is going to have a link to Wikipedia. It's going to have a link to Family Search. It's going to have a link to the ancestry um, documents that are available for that country. So those are all Belarusian related documents they have. Cindy's list, World Gen Web, which was something I thought was going to really take off, but never seemed to. A link to the Library of Congress as it relates to that country. And then we got down here the Belarusian National Archives and the Belarusian National Library. So far, I have yet to find a country that does not have their archives and national library online. So we'll provide links to all of those.
That's wonderful.
So the next thing is, again, somebody then needs to take over this page. Right now, it's just an information page. But if somebody's interested in this case, Belarusian history, but if there's another country in the world that you've got interest in and you want to start a team, you'll come over. We'll give you the link to access the site, and then it's up to you to decide what you want to do with it. You and your team. You'll pull a team together, get on G2G, start you know garnering some interest. If you want to do challenges, if you want to focus on notables, if you want to do cemeteries, if you just want to do helping each other out with your own family trees, there's all kinds of ways you can go with it.
And
But just like a
also,
lot of these. Mhm.
it would probably a great idea too to contact the Ambassadors Project social media group, because
Hmm.
they can, if you're not on social media yourself, then they may be able to help you spread the word out on social media that there's a new project for Bhutan, or the whatever country your focus is. Um, Help spread that word, because there might be a Facebook group out there for that country, and so just kind of think about that too when people are interested in working on a country. Think about ways to spread the word out um, to the other genealogists out there.
And I imagine in time these countries are all going to kind of take off in their own directions, and that's fine. I don't plan on micromanaging 195
Yeah,
countries on top of, the notables and everything else that I'm doing. So my goal is to get everybody started, and then I'll be around for support. So you'll
right.
never be, on your own. But I'm not going to come in and tell each one of these country projects how to run themselves, because it just,
Too
number
much
one,
work.
that's not where my interest is, but it would just be overwhelming.
Yeah,
So, you don't have to worry about somebody necessarily looking over your shoulder. But again, we will be here to help. So also don't feel like you're going to be thrown in there um, to fend for yourself.
well,
And once you get a
they get a
team together,
whole project page already set up and everything. So they're
yeah. So
starting
I
out
think
really great.
I have this theory that a lot of people may want to do projects but don't know how to start and are intimidated by that. So here
Yeah.
it's, what do they call it? Turnkey, a
Yeah.
turnkey project. Yeah.
Yep. You're
So
getting
that's
them
our goal. And,
started.
and And I don't expect all 195 will be claimed, by the end of the year, but um, over time, hopefully that, they will. And if a country isn't claimed, it just means we don't have a lot of interest in that country, and so be it. Um, but something that is real key, and I think this is more along WikiTree's intentions with the project, is we really do want to be a global community. And if somebody from Belarus logs on and there's nothing about Belarus on WikiTree, they're not going to stick around very long.
Yeah.
So at least if they see we have a page and we've got resources, maybe they will stick around. Maybe they'll adopt a project. But if we want it to be a global community, we have to have we have to acknowledge all of these countries that are not only underrepresented on WikiTree, but are underrepresented in the genealogical community as a
As a
whole.
whole. Yeah.
I've said before, you go to a bookstore and you can find books on English genealogy, German, Scandinavian, but you're not going to find Belarusian. You're not going to find
Right.
Bhutanese. Um, and I challenge you to find any other major genealogical website that has a Bhutanese section. So we will probably be the first, which is kind of cool in itself. But so anyway, if anybody has any questions about it, go ahead and email me. And if you're interested in adopting a project, or not necessarily, even if you don't want to manage it, but you just want to be, participate, drop me a note, and we'll get you going on it.
So
This will not be opened.
I'm dropping your profile
Okay.
URL into the chat so people have access to be able to send you a private message from there.
Yeah. And the project itself will not open until January 1st, but if you're interested in leading a project, we'll get you set up in advance so you can start preparing.
All right.
And with that, I think we've covered just about everything there is to cover.
I
It's
think we
kind of a
have.
bittersweet session. It's sad that it's over, but it's also kind of a relief in some ways that it's over, and particularly because we have some exciting stuff to look forward to, now that it is over. Um, so yeah, I agree with Kathy. It's sad that it's over, but we're going to have a good 2016.
Paul's sending his
Yeah.
thanks for the 15 country
And
project. It was
thanks to Paul,
interesting.
because he was um, with us, I believe, from the beginning, and just did some amazing work.
That's
He
great.
was
Well,
he was
thank you
yeah.
everybody for joining us for this last 15 Nation Global Tour wrap up. And we will see you all around the tree. Hopefully, we'll see some people volunteering to take on some of those countries for the global project. Bye.
All right. Thank you, everybody.